I always thought that family meant trust, that no matter what, blood ties would keep people loyal. I was wrong, so very wrong. My name is Fia, and until a few months ago, my life was relatively normal. I had a small circle of friends, a steady job, and a beach house that had been in my family for generations. My parents left it to me when I turned 25. A modest gesture, but to me, it meant everything. It wasn't just a house. It was memories of summers spent building sandcastles with my little brother, watching sunsets with my parents, and late-night talks under the stars. But then came Liza. Liza, my sister-in-law. She married my older brother 2 years ago. And I'll admit, I didn't like her much at first. There was something about her that seemed calculated, always smiling too wide, laughing too loudly, asking too many questions. I brushed it off as harmless, told myself I was overthinking. But when she started showing too much interest in the beach house, my gut screamed otherwise. It started with small things. A casual, "Oh, I'd love to see the beach house sometime," which quickly escalated into daily texts. "Fia, can I come by this weekend? I want to see how you've decorated." And somehow, every weekend, Liza found her way there. She lingered, touched things, asked about taxes, insurance, even the estate paperwork. I felt my patience fraying. Then came the warning signs. One morning, I came down to find Liza, chatting with the realtor in my kitchen. She looked calm, polite, smiling that fake smile I knew too well. But my blood ran cold when I realized she was asking about the deeds. The deeds, not about the decoration, not about the view, but about legal ownership. My heart pounded. I approached slowly, pretending I hadn't noticed. "Liza," I said, my voice measured. "What are you doing?" "Oh, Fia," she said with wide eyes, as if caught doing nothing wrong. "I was just asking Mr. Ellis about, taxes and insurance. Family responsibility stuff." Her laugh didn't reach her eyes, and I knew she was lying. I should have stopped it there. I should have told my brother. But something told me this was bigger than just curiosity. Liza wasn't asking. She was planning. And if I wasn't careful, she would try to take what was mine. So I started paying closer attention. Every visit, every phone call, every little innocent question. I started taking notes, snapping photos of documents left on the counter, recording conversations when I could. I felt paranoid, maybe even obsessive. But the gut feeling that had been gnawing at me wouldn't let me rest. And then came the moment I realized it wasn't paranoia at all. I had been out running errands when my neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, stopped me on the boardwalk. She was shaking her head, pointing toward the house. "Fia, I hate to say this, but I just saw Liza handing someone papers in your driveway. She looked like she was signing something." My heart stopped. I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Signing what?" "I don't know exactly," Mrs. Callahan said. But it didn't look right. Very official-looking papers. And the guy she was talking to, he had a badge, maybe police. Police. I thanked her quickly and ran home, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I needed to check the house. My sanctuary, my memories, my inheritance. And when I arrived, the driveway was empty, but I found a single piece of paper sticking out of the mailbox. My name printed at the top, a signature at the bottom that wasn't mine. Liza. I unfolded it carefully, stomach twisting. It was a notice, an attempt to claim part ownership of the house. Fraudulent, illegal, and there it was, in black and white. The betrayal I had been sensing all along. My sister-in-law was trying to steal my beach house, and she had no idea I knew. I sank onto the porch steps, the ocean waves lapping softly in the distance, trying to steady my racing thoughts. The house that had once been my safe place suddenly felt like a battlefield. I couldn't let her get away with it. Not now. Not ever. That's when I made my decision. Liza wasn't just a little greedy. She was reckless. And I intended to make sure she learned exactly what happens when you mess with me. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. I started typing a message to my lawyer, and then another, to my brother, carefully worded, just to plant a seed of awareness. But most importantly, I began plotting revenge, justice, my beach house. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. After finding that fraudulent notice in the mailbox, I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liza's smug smile, that false innocence dripping off her face, and I felt a chill run down my spine. How long had she been planning this? How many people had she tried to convince to go along with her scheme? The next morning, I woke up determined. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I started by retracing her steps, quietly asking neighbors if they had seen anything unusual, subtly observing her habits, without letting anyone suspect I was onto her. It didn't take long for patterns to emerge. Liza always found excuses to stop by when my brother was away. She asked to see the house for inspiration or to discuss family traditions, but her questions were always about legal matters, insurance policies, and taxes. She was probing, testing the waters, looking for any loophole she could exploit. I even caught her one morning leaning over my desk when she thought I wasn't looking, flipping through a folder labeled Beach House Deeds and Documents. My heart raced. I wanted to scream at her, demand answers, but I held my tongue. She needed to think she was in control. Because she wasn't. I started taking more deliberate steps. Cameras installed in discreet corners of the property. A notebook filled with dates, times, and observations. Every phone call she made or received near the house was recorded. Every suspicious visitor noted. I was gathering evidence, preparing for the moment when I could finally confront her, or, if necessary, the authorities. But the more I observed, the more I realized how deep her obsession ran. Liza wasn't just greedy. She was cunning, manipulative, and relentless. She started dropping subtle hints to my brother, trying to make him doubt my ownership. Ophia's always so particular about the house, isn't she? She would say with a sweet smile. Sometimes I wonder if she's overreacting. And just like that, she planted seeds of doubt, hoping my brother would intervene on her behalf. I could see the fear in my brother's eyes, the hesitation. He loved his wife, and he trusted her. But he trusted me too, and thankfully, he didn't act impulsively. Still, it was a delicate balance. One wrong move, and Liza could manipulate her way into gaining control, or at least cause enough chaos to make me question myself. One afternoon, I decided to test her. I left a folder of fake documents on the dining table, labeled Confidential Beach House Notes. I watched from the window as she entered the room under the guise of tidying up, and her eyes widened when she saw the folder. She reached for it, carefully flipping through pages, muttering under her breath. I couldn't hear exactly what she said, but the look on her face, greed, excitement, anticipation, was unmistakable. That's when it clicked. Liza was not just planning to claim the house. She was studying ways to cover her tracks, ways to make it seem legitimate. She was bold enough to think she could actually get away with it. My stomach turned. I had to stop her before it got that far. But I also realized I couldn't confront her directly yet. She was too clever, too sly. I needed patience, strategy, and a way to catch her red-handed. Over the next few days, I became hyper-aware of her movements. I noticed how she lingered near the property boundaries, how she called unfamiliar numbers late at night, how she suddenly seemed interested in neighbors who might unwittingly validate her claims. Everything about her behavior screamed plotting, and I documented every detail. Then came the first real test. Liza called me one morning, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Fia, I was thinking, maybe I could host a small dinner at the beach house. Just a few family friends. Nothing big. Her words sounded innocent, but I knew better. She wanted access, time alone in the house, and perhaps an opportunity to manipulate or even plant something that could help her claim. I agreed, but carefully. I let her know I'd be around the whole time, keeping watch, while pretending to be polite. The dinner came, and I watched every move she made. She hovered near the documents again, commenting casually on minor details, trying to gauge my reactions. She didn't know I had been one step ahead. Every interaction, every smile, every fake laugh she threw at me was recorded in my mind, filed away for later. By the end of the evening, I knew something important. Liza was fearless. She believed she could outsmart me, and that's exactly when I decided. It wasn't enough to just watch anymore. I had to act. The stakes had risen. I was no longer just protecting a house. I was protecting my legacy, my memories, and my sense of justice. And I had to make Liza understand that some lines, especially when it comes to family and betrayal, should never be crossed. Little did she know, the plan I was beginning to set in motion would leave her regretting every smile, every subtle lie, and every attempt she made to take what was rightfully mine. The next few days were some of the longest in my life. Every time I saw Liza, I felt like I was walking on a tightrope. One false move, one slip, and she could try to take the beach house right from under me. But I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything she had been plotting. I spent hours going through old paperwork, deeds, emails, and even voicemails, looking for anything that could back me up. I needed proof, hard evidence that Liza's intentions weren't innocent. I knew that confronting her without it would be risky. She was too smooth, too practiced at pretending, and then I found it. It was subtle at first, buried deep in an email chain between Liza and some unknown legal advisor she had apparently hired. The messages were polite on the surface, but the content made my blood boil. She had been researching ways to challenge the deed, ways to claim partial ownership, and instructions on how to manipulate signatures and witnesses. Every step was planned, every loophole exploited. I felt a mix of fury and fear. She wasn't just ambitious, she was dangerous. This was no longer a petty attempt to visit the house. It was an outright attack on my property, my family's legacy, and my trust. I printed everything, creating a meticulous file with dates, screenshots, and notes. Every interaction she had ever had regarding the house suddenly fell into place. I could see the method in her madness. She had been working on this for months, carefully testing boundaries, planting seeds of doubt, and gathering allies. But there was one part that shocked me the most. Hidden among her plans was a document that looked official, a pre-filled claim to the property, ready to be submitted. Liza had already imagined herself living there, decorating, rearranging, making it hers. The audacity made me gasp. I remember sitting on the porch, clutching the papers, staring at the ocean, and thinking, how could someone I considered family do this? The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. But in that moment, I realized something important. I couldn't let anger blind me. I needed strategy, patience, precision. I decided to start building a case, not just for me, but for the police if it came to that. I called a trusted lawyer and explained everything, carefully leaving out my own emotions to make sure the facts were crystal clear. We discussed options, evidence gathering, and the possibility of legal action. My lawyer advised caution. Don't confront her directly yet. Make sure every step you take is documented. If she realizes you know, she'll cover her tracks. And he was right. I began documenting everything even more meticulously. Every visit, every text, every suspicious interaction. I even started using my phone to record subtle conversations she had while thinking I wasn't paying attention. It felt like I had stepped into a spy movie, except this was real life, and the stakes were personal. One morning, I noticed something odd while reviewing my notes. Liza had scheduled a casual visit with my brother. At the same time, she was asking me about family estate discussions. I knew instantly this was a calculated move. She wanted to make it seem normal, innocent, while trying to influence my brother behind my back. I decided to act preemptively. I sent my brother a careful message, not revealing everything, but hinting that Liza was overstepping her bounds. His reply came quickly. He was shocked, but didn't want to confront her without proof. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. That afternoon, I staged a small test. I left a folder in the living room, filled with fake correspondence about the house's finances, taxes, and legal notices. I watched from the window as Liza arrived, her eyes lighting up when she noticed it. She flipped through the papers, muttering to herself, her hand trembling slightly with excitement. She was already imagining her victory, and that's when I realized I had everything I needed, not just for a confrontation, but for a decisive move. The pieces were falling into place. Liza had overplayed her hand, and I had the evidence to prove it. Every subtle lie, every planted doubt, every clandestine plan she had made. It was all documented, all traceable, and all ready to be exposed. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. This wasn't just about protecting a house anymore. It was about reclaiming control, standing up for myself, and making sure Liza understood that betrayal comes with consequences. Little did she know, I had a plan that would leave her stunned, powerless, and completely exposed. And it was about to begin. I had all the evidence I needed, but I knew better than to confront Liza recklessly. She was clever, and any direct accusation could send her scurrying, destroying what little proof I had. No, this had to be delicate, a subtle confrontation that would reveal her intentions without tipping her off. It happened on a warm Saturday morning. I invited Liza over to the beach house for a friendly brunch. I kept the tone light, sunny, and casual, all while my mind was buzzing with strategy. I had the house carefully arranged, papers in plain sight but strategically unreadable, cameras running discreetly, and my phone ready to record. She arrived wearing her usual perfectly polished smile, carrying a basket of pastries, as if she hadn't been plotting a takeover for months. I greeted her warmly, keeping my voice soft, almost cheerful. Liza, I'm so glad you could come. I've been meaning to catch up. Her eyes flickered briefly toward the folder on the table, the one I had left as bait, but she masked it with a laugh. Of course, Fia, I've been looking forward to it. The house looks amazing, by the way. I nodded, letting her words wash over me, pretending to be flattered. But my eyes never left hers. There it was, just beneath that sweet tone, a flicker of calculation. She wasn't visiting to admire the view or enjoy brunch. She was evaluating, strategizing, measuring her next move. We sat at the table, sipping coffee, exchanging casual pleasantries. I asked subtle questions about her recent interest in the property, keeping my tone innocent but sharp. So, Liza, have you been talking to anyone about the house lately? Realtors, lawyers, family friends. She paused, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Then she laughed, a little too loudly. Oh, you know me. I'm just curious, always asking questions. Nothing serious, I promise. Her hands fidgeted with the napkin in her lap. I noticed a twitch in her left eye, a slight hesitation in her voice. My heart raced. She was nervous. She was hiding something. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice as if sharing a secret. Liza, you know, it's important that everything about the house stays clear and legal. I'd hate for misunderstandings to happen, especially when family is involved. Her expression stiffened, and she chuckled awkwardly. Of course, Fia, I would never. I interrupted gently but firmly. I know you wouldn't intentionally cause trouble, but sometimes intentions aren't enough. Actions speak louder. She blinked at me, caught off guard. The smile she usually wore like armor was cracking. I could see the gears turning in her mind, trying to figure out if I knew, trying to plan a response. But I didn't give her answers. I just let the silence sit between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Then she tried to change the subject, talking about her own family, her hobbies, a new recipe she had tried. But every word was strained, every laugh forced. I realized she was cornered, even if she didn't know it yet. After brunch, as she walked toward the door, I casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, I've been thinking about updating some of the estate documents. It's always good to keep everything in order, don't you think?" Her face paled, and I caught the subtle flush creeping up her neck. Yes, absolutely," she said too quickly, then hurried out, leaving behind a faint scent of expensive perfume and tension in the air. I closed the door and exhaled slowly. That brief encounter had confirmed everything. Liza was up to something. Her smile, her laughter, her rehearsed innocence. It was all a facade. She was ambitious, cunning, and reckless. And she believed she could manipulate the situation to her favor. But I had a plan. And she had no idea that every move she had made, every deceitful thought had been documented. Every whisper, every subtle manipulation, every attempt to question my ownership, caught, recorded, ready to be used. For the first time, I felt a spark of satisfaction. Liza had underestimated me, and that was her biggest mistake. She thought she could play me, but I was already several moves ahead. The game had begun, and I was ready to play it to the end. Little did she know, the next time she tried to make a move, it wouldn't be over brunch. It would be with the law on my side. After brunch, I sat alone on the porch, watching the waves roll gently onto the shore, and let my thoughts simmer. Liza had revealed her true self, smiling, polite, innocent, but cunning and calculating beneath it all. And now I had a choice. I could confront her directly and risk her slipping through my fingers, or I could play her at her own game, using patience, precision, and strategy to ensure justice was served. I chose strategy. I began by reviewing everything I had gathered: emails, pre-filled claim forms, screenshots of her suspicious texts, and the recordings of her subtle manipulations. Every document, every note, every photograph was organized meticulously. I created a timeline of her actions, connecting dots she thought were invisible. And the more I saw, the more confident I became. Liza had overplayed her hand, and I could use it against her. But it wasn't just about exposing her. It was about making sure she felt the consequences of her actions, without stooping to her level. I wanted her to understand that betrayal might seem clever, but when faced with evidence, it crumbles. I called my lawyer that evening. Calmly, I explained everything, piece by piece, keeping my emotions in check. We discussed the best way to approach this legally, but also strategically. The goal was simple: catch her in the act. The moment she tried to claim ownership of the house, I needed irrefutable proof to show authorities. Then it hit me. Why wait for her to make a move when I could orchestrate the moment? I could create a situation where she would be so confident in her plan, so blinded by her greed, that she wouldn't see the trap until it was too late. I smiled, a mix of excitement and anticipation coursing through me. The first step was subtle. I continued allowing her small visits, pretending to be friendly and trusting. I even let her wander through certain areas of the house, all while secretly observing her every move. Cameras captured her actions, and my notebook recorded every word. Every gesture was a breadcrumb, leading to the moment I had been waiting for. Next, I needed to ensure that any attempt she made to claim ownership would be witnessed and undeniable. I made calls to neighbors, subtly mentioning that I might have legal documents reviewed soon. I hinted at small gatherings, creating an atmosphere where she would feel safe moving forward with her plan. Meanwhile, I prepared the ultimate piece of my strategy. The authorities, not in a threatening way, but as a safety net, I contacted the local police, carefully explaining that someone might attempt to commit fraud against my property. I described the situation without revealing my full plan, just enough for them to be aware. They advised caution, agreed to stand by if needed, and promised discreet support if the situation escalated. It felt like setting a chessboard. Every piece in place, every move calculated, every possibility anticipated. Liza was playing the game of deception, and I was about to show her how dangerous it is to underestimate someone who knows the rules, even better than you do. I also took a moment to reflect on why this mattered so much to me. The beach house wasn't just property. It was a repository of memories, family history, and emotional value that couldn't be quantified. Losing it, or having someone else claim it, would have felt like losing a piece of myself. That realization only strengthened my resolve. Then came the part that required patience. Waiting for the perfect moment. Liza had to think she was winning, that her clever little plan was working. She had to feel secure enough to make a bold move. And when she did, that's when everything would fall into place. As I watched the sun dip below the horizon, casting golden streaks across the water, I felt a sense of calm determination. I wasn't acting out of anger anymore. I was acting with clarity, purpose, and power. And soon, Liza would learn exactly what happens when someone tries to cross boundaries that aren't theirs to cross. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. And it was coming. The days that followed were tense, like walking on a tightrope over an ocean of uncertainty. Every knock on the door, every chirp of the phone, made my heart race. I knew Liza was getting bolder, and I had to be ready. It all started with a text from her. "Fia, I'd love to come by tomorrow afternoon. Just a quick visit, maybe review some papers about the house." I smiled faintly, typing back, "Of course, Liza. Come anytime." Little did she know, anytime was carefully orchestrated. The next afternoon, I arranged the house as if I were expecting a casual visit. Papers were casually left on the dining table, legal documents peeking out just enough to catch her attention, cameras discreetly positioned in corners, and my phone recording audio in my bag. Every detail was designed to make her think she had the upper hand. When she arrived, she strutted in confidently, her designer bag swinging at her side, a smile plastered on her face that screamed, "I'm winning." She had no idea she was walking straight into the web I had spun. I greeted her warmly, keeping my tone neutral, calm and friendly. "Liza, so glad you could make it. Come in, make yourself comfortable." She barely glanced at me, moving straight for the papers on the table. Her eyes lit up when she saw them. She leaned over, picking up the documents, her fingers grazing my carefully placed notes. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to brew coffee, casually observing her reactions. "This is great," she murmured, scanning the papers. "Some of these details will help me understand better." I didn't react, letting her interpret, understand better, any way she wanted. Every word, every gesture she made was being recorded, every move catalogued. She was walking blind into a trap, and I let her think it was her cunning at work. As she continued, I called my lawyer discreetly, giving him the cue. The moment she tried to claim ownership or manipulate the documents in any way, we would escalate. He nodded, understanding the plan, without me having to say a word. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Liza reached for the deed itself, the actual proof of ownership, and opened it as if she were inspecting it for flaws she could exploit. Her face was tense now, but her eyes glimmered with the audacity of someone who believed she could still pull it off. I stepped out from the kitchen, my voice calm but steady. "Liza, Are you sure you should be touching those? She froze for a second, her hand lingering over the document. I'm just reviewing them, she said, too quickly. Yes, I said gently. Because, actions like this can have serious consequences. Her confidence wavered for a fraction of a second. That was all I needed. I watched her closely as she tried to recover, pretending to be casual. She muttered something about, just curious. But the smirk she wore earlier had vanished. She was realizing that the power she thought she had wasn't hers at all. And then I sent the final signal. I casually stepped toward the door, dialing a number I hadn't used in weeks. The police. Hi, I said sweetly. I think I need a bit of help at my property. Someone might be attempting fraud. Within minutes, I heard the distant wail of sirens approaching. Liza's eyes widened. Her hand froze over the deed. Her carefully rehearsed facade crumbled. You called. The police? She whispered, her voice trembling. I smiled. The calmest I had felt in weeks. I did. I think you should just stay put until they arrive. Her face drained of color. And suddenly, the confident, calculating woman who had tried to manipulate her way into my home was reduced to panic and disbelief. She had underestimated me at every turn, and now the consequences of her actions were closing in. The beach house that had been my sanctuary was no longer just a battleground. It was the stage for her downfall, and as the police car pulled into the driveway, lights flashing faintly against the windows, I felt a rush of satisfaction. Every carefully laid plan, every piece of evidence, every patient observation, it had all led to this moment. Liza had walked straight into the trap, and there was no turning back. The faint wail of sirens grew louder, echoing across the coastline. I felt my heartbeat quicken, not from fear, but from anticipation. Every move I had made over the past weeks had led to this moment. Liza, oblivious to the trap she had stepped into, continued to fumble with the deed, her confident mask slipping with every second. Fear? What did you do? She whispered, her voice shaking, eyes darting nervously toward the sound of approaching vehicles. I remained calm, almost serene. I did what anyone would do when faced with a situation like this. I said softly. I protected what's mine. By the time the police car pulled into the driveway, Liza's hands were trembling. She glanced at me, panic flashing across her face, her carefully rehearsed composure completely gone. I could almost see her thoughts racing. How did she know? What evidence does she have? 2 officers stepped out, their expressions professional but alert. I stepped forward to greet them, presenting the situation calmly. Thank you for coming, I said. This woman, I gestured toward Liza, has been attempting to commit fraud on my property. I have the evidence right here. Liza's eyes widened in horror as I pulled out my neatly organized files, emails, pre-filled claims, text messages, and recordings. No, you don't understand, she stammered, her voice rising in desperation. The officers approached, reviewing the documents carefully. One officer looked up at me. Ma'am, everything appears to be in order. We'll need her to explain herself. Liza tried to speak, but her words faltered. She pointed at the documents, stammering, I didn't. The police weren't buying it. They asked her to step aside, and she hesitated, glancing around as if searching for a lifeline. But there was none. Every witness, every recording, every trap I had set was now undeniable. I stayed back, watching quietly, as she realized the gravity of the situation. The audacious, confident woman who had walked in like she owned the place was now shrinking under the weight of her exposure. Her face was pale, her lips quivering, her hands shaking. One officer finally spoke. Ms. Liza, we have reason to believe you've attempted to submit fraudulent claims regarding this property. We'll need to take statements. Her knees nearly buckled. It's not what it looks like, she cried, but no one was listening. I could feel the tension in the room, the shift from chaos to clarity. Justice was finally in motion. As the officers led her toward their vehicle, she cast one last look at me, a mixture of fear, disbelief, and something I couldn't quite name. Shame, perhaps, or maybe the realization that she had underestimated me entirely. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me in waves. The beach house was safe, my family's legacy protected, and the betrayal had been exposed in a way that couldn't be ignored. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a small smile. Liza had been bold, reckless, and cunning, but patience, preparation, and evidence had won the day. And as I watched her being escorted into the police car, I realized something powerful. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation. It's calm, strategic action that leaves the betrayer powerless. The beach house was mine. The memories, the sunsets, the laughter, it all remained untouched. But more than that, I had proven to myself that boundaries are meant to be respected, and betrayal has consequences. Liza would think twice before crossing me again. And as the police car disappeared down the road, I knew that while this chapter had closed, my vigilance and my strength would never fade. The air felt heavy and quiet after the police car disappeared down the road. The beach house, which had been a stage for deception and tension, now felt like a sanctuary once more. I sank onto the porch steps, letting the ocean breeze wash over me, and tried to process everything that had just happened. Liza's confidence, her calculated schemes, her manipulations, it had all come crashing down. In the span of an afternoon, the woman who thought she could take what wasn't hers had been exposed. She had walked into the house like she owned it, only to be caught red-handed, powerless, and humiliated. I didn't feel joy. Well, maybe just a little. But more than that, I felt relief. Relief that my family's legacy was safe. Relief that the beach house remained mine. And relief that justice had been served in the calmest, most precise way possible. But the aftermath wasn't over. The family gathered later that evening. Tension thick in the air. My brother had returned home after hearing the news. His face pale, guilt and shock mingling in his expression. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He had trusted Liza, believed in her innocence, and now the truth was undeniable. Fear? I had no idea she would. He trailed off, unable to find the right words. "It's okay," I said softly. "You didn't know. None of us did. But now we do, and that's what matters." My parents, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the room, gave me a nod of silent approval. Their pride was evident in their eyes. They had trusted me with this house, and I had protected it, not with anger or force, but with strategy and patience. As for Liza, she remained in everyone's thoughts, a cautionary tale. Her arrogance, her sense of entitlement, and her lack of foresight had led to her downfall. Even my brother had to admit, albeit reluctantly, that she had gone too far. "It's like she didn't even think," he muttered. Everything was right there, waiting for her to be caught, and that's exactly what she had done. Walked straight into a trap she didn't even see coming. I spent the evening securing the house, double-checking the documents, and reflecting on the lessons learned. Trust is fragile, especially in family. Betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. But the strength to protect what's yours comes from clarity, patience, and the courage to act when the time is right. By nightfall, the beach house felt alive again. The scent of the ocean, the sound of the waves, the memories etched into every corner. It all reminded me why I had fought so hard. This house was more than just property. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to standing your ground even when the odds seem stacked against you. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew Liza would think twice before ever trying something like this again. The downfall wasn't just legal, it was personal, emotional, and undeniable. I looked out at the horizon, the sun setting in a blaze of gold and pink. In that moment, I felt a sense of closure. The battle had been won, the betrayal exposed, and my strength reaffirmed. The beach house was safe. My family's trust had been honored. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe freely again. Liza had underestimated me, and that, more than anything, had been her biggest mistake. The days after Liza's downfall were quiet, almost surreal. The house, which had been filled with tension, deceit, and whispers of betrayal, now felt like it belonged solely to me again. Every room seemed to breathe with relief, every window framing the calm. Endless ocean reminded me why I had fought so hard. I spent the first morning walking through each room, making small adjustments, but more importantly, taking the time to reconnect with the memories embedded in the walls. The laughter of summers past, the family dinners, the late-night conversations with my brother, all of it was untouched. I could almost hear echoes of the past, comforting and grounding me. Family began to visit, one by one, cautiously at first. My parents came, their eyes filled with a mix of pride and relief. "Fia," my mother said softly, "you handled this so well. We're proud of you." I smiled, trying to hide the exhaustion that had settled deep in my bones. It wasn't easy, I admitted, but it had to be done. My brother stayed longer than anyone else. He didn't say much, just sat quietly on the porch, watching the waves, as if replaying the events over and over in his mind. Eventually he spoke. I can't believe she tried to do this. I trusted her, and I feel like I failed." I reached over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, you didn't fail. She failed herself. She underestimated us, underestimated me. That's on her, not you." He nodded. A weight lifted, though his expression remained thoughtful. "I guess I never really knew her." "None of us did," I said. And that's the lesson. Trust is earned, not given blindly. Even within a family, the house slowly returned to its normal rhythm. I resumed my daily walks on the beach, felt the sand beneath my feet, and watched the horizon as the sun rose each morning. But something had shifted within me. The experience had left me stronger, more vigilant, and more aware of the fragility of trust. I also reflected on Liza, not with anger, but with clarity. She had been ambitious, clever, and audacious, but her greed and disregard for boundaries had been her downfall. Justice had been served, but more importantly, the truth had prevailed. She had learned, albeit harshly, that crossing lines comes with consequences. I spent an afternoon going through my files one last time, organizing evidence for records, and, if necessary, legal follow-up. The satisfaction wasn't in revenge. It was in the certainty that I had done the right thing. I had protected what was mine, safeguarded my family's legacy, and upheld the values my parents had instilled in me. And as evening fell, I found myself sitting on the porch, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. The waves lapped gently against the shore, steady and eternal, reminding me that life moves forward, even after chaos. In that quiet moment, I realized something profound. Strength isn't about force or aggression. It's about patience, clarity, and the courage to act when the time is right. And I had done all three. The house was mine again, yes. But more than that, my sense of self, my resolve, and my understanding of family, trust, and betrayal were stronger than ever. And while Liza's shadow lingered faintly in memory, I knew I had emerged not just victorious, but wiser. The beach house had returned to its peaceful rhythm. The waves lapped gently against the shore. Seagulls called overhead, and the sun dipped below the horizon in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Everything seemed perfect, but I knew that what had happened wasn't just about a house. It was about trust, betrayal, and the strength to protect what truly matters. Sitting on the porch one evening, I reflected on the past weeks. Liza's attempt to claim the house had been audacious, manipulative, and deceitful, but it had also taught me something invaluable. Trust isn't blind, family loyalty isn't guaranteed, and sometimes the people closest to you can surprise you in the worst ways. But the story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about patience, strategy, and courage. I had chosen to act calmly, to plan carefully, and to document everything. I had let evidence speak louder than emotion, and in doing so, justice had been served. I thought of my brother, who had been caught between loyalty to his wife and loyalty to me. I realized that even the closest family members can make mistakes, and forgiveness isn't about ignoring betrayal. It's about recognizing intentions and learning from them. And Liza, she had been exposed. Her overconfidence, her greed, and her disregard for boundaries had led her to a point of humiliation and accountability. She would think twice before ever attempting something like that again. And while I didn't wish her harm, I understood that consequences were sometimes the harshest teacher. The beach house stood as it always had, solid, enduring, and full of memories. It was a symbol, not just of inheritance, but of resilience, vigilance, and the power of standing up for oneself. Every sunrise and sunset reminded me that life goes on, and strength is measured not just by what you can protect, but how you protect it. I smiled as I walked along the shoreline, sand beneath my feet and wind in my hair. The conflict, the tension, the betrayal, they were behind me now. What mattered was the lessons learned, the family bonds strengthened, and the peace reclaimed. Life wasn't perfect, and people weren't always trustworthy, but I had proven to myself that with patience, clarity, and courage, even the most audacious betrayals could be overcome. And as I watched the sun disappear into the horizon, I whispered quietly to myself, no one can take what's truly yours. If you stand firm, plan wisely, and never lose your resolve. The beach house was safe. My family's trust had been honored, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. The story of betrayal had ended. The story of empowerment and justice was just beginning. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Peace out!